how does someone combat that stress? Because I think stress is like majority of our jobs nowadays, no matter what you're doing.
Stress is sneaky. Stress has a way of building within a person where you don't realize you're up here. And I think what we saw during COVID, everything kind of came down to that role and having to raise your stress level to be able to meet where you have to be to perform, raised it for everyone. And now everyone is there. And so people don't know how to back that down.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Happy Practice Playbook. I'm Mo Jones, and in each episode of the show, you'll hear conversations with dentists, office managers, staff, and specialists who know how to create a happy practice. Today, we are joined by Lorie Streeter, who, just like many of our other guests, has a huge list of accolades, and I'm so excited to speak with her. She is currently the Vice President of AADOM, as well as a certified therapeutic coach, and also named one of the top 25 women in dentistry by Dental Product Reports magazine. Outside of her accomplishments in the dental field, she is also an accomplished musician and songwriter. Welcome, Lorie. How are you today?
Oh, I don't know. After all of that, I'm trying to pinch myself to figure out who that was you were just talking about. So I'm really good. Thank you, Mo. How are you?
You know, I'm good. I'm very excited, feeling incredibly underqualified, not only because of your accomplishments in the dental field, but just the fact that you're a musician and songwriter. I think that's incredible talent. I could never, and I think that's so freaking cool.
Thank you. Thank you. It's definitely been fun. And I probably could tell you some stories. Most of the time when I'm talking to people, I ask like, here are three, there's an old game called like 3 truths and a lie. So I give my truths and my lie, and most of them pick the truths because they seem so odd. So yeah, I'm like, so I was on the Gong Show when I was 7. But everybody's like, are you kidding me? That has to be fake. And I'm like, no, that's actually very true. So there you go. We may have more trivia as we go on. You never know.
So what I'm hearing is that you're really fun at parties.
I'm too old to go to parties now, Mo. Thank you so much. But yes, I used to be pretty fun. I used to be the entertainment, but now I just like fun for me is 9 o'clock on the couch watching TV. So it's all good.
I don't know. I feel like we're going to have a lot of fun today just already from just all this. I feel like we're going to have a lot of trivia getting pulled out that our listeners are going to be like, wait, where did that come from? But this is kind of fun.
Absolutely. I'm ready.
Perfect. Well, we love to start our episodes with a statistic. So today's statistic is 41% of stressed workers say stress leads to a loss in productivity. Do you think that is true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, AADOM is a national organization that has 70 plus chapters nationwide of office managers in all size practices. And what we see for sure is stress really contributes to not only productivity, but lack of interest in their job, feeling like they're not satisfied. I mean, you could go on and on and on. And so, yes, absolutely think that's true for sure.
I think anytime, right, that we go through life, stress is a regular thing. But I think especially the time we live in now, that is just a regular factor. And how does someone combat that stress? Because I think stress is like majority of our jobs nowadays, no matter what you're doing.
Well, one of the things that's so interesting, and I speak on this quite a bit, is that stress is sneaky. Stress has a way of building within a person where you don't realize you're up here because it's a gradual climb, right? And I think what we saw during COVID with office managers really being turned to, not to negate any other position in the practice, but mostly for office managers, dentists, team members. How do you furlough people? How do you help people? How do you get the PPP loans? How do you get the PPE? I mean, everything kind of came down to that role. And I think having to raise your stress level to be able to meet where you have to be to perform, raised it for everyone. And now everyone is there. And so people don't know how to back that down. And I think that's a really interesting problem all across the country. We have office managers, and I don't know, Mo, if you've noticed this. I mean, you seem like a really super upbeat person, but people have a tendency right now to be a little bit more edgy than they normally would be. and a little harder to deal with. So that's affecting teams, it's affecting office managers, it's affecting everyone. So, that whole awful saying we all just need to kind of take a chill pill. That's kind of where we need to go. We need to kind of get back to, I don't know, like I have a couple metaphors rolling around in my head, but breathing is a big deal. Sometimes breathing is just enough.
So, with that, what would you say is the difference and the impact of a stressed, distracted, or unwell office manager?
So I like to look at practices like a family. So anytime we're in that system for 8 to 10 hours a day, we're basically in this, work family, right? So I think when you have an office manager, particularly because I look at them as kind of the nucleus of the practice. So they're the kind of, and I'm speaking from experience. So I was a dental office manager at the start of my career for 12 years. So I've actually lived this role. And every single person has such a very important part to play, but I almost feel like it's kind of like Tetris, like that ops manager sits as that base piece, and then everybody kind of fits in around because that ops manager touches every aspect of the practice where everyone else does not. We all impact each other, but the office manager kind of acts as the grounding cord for the whole thing. So I think when you have an office manager that's super stressed and not dealing with their stress well, it can't help but mirror out to all the other people on the team. And I think that's really critical because we're in that familial situation where we're together so many hours. And when you start to build resentment, you start to build anger and animosity toward other team members. I mean, it can happen. And most of that is caused from being burnt out. So the real question is there such a thing as work-life balance? And that's what everybody tries to figure out.
And with that, it sounds like you're saying that the office manager is a crucial, if not integral part of the dental practice, correct?
Yes. And it's so funny because when I was an office manager, I think that one of the things that I took for granted was how much of all the other positions, stress and burdens that I took on because I was responsible for the doctor's schedule, the way the patients reacted, collecting the money, billing the insurance. I mean, if you think about it, it's like literally this like hat rack that you're constantly trying to, throw on these hats for. And that takes a special personality to be able to do all that. And again, I have a ton of respect for, hygiene. So, singular focus, so clinical, so such a big part of the health and wellness of the patient. The office manager role is so different because that isn't their focus. Their focus is keeping the engine running, being that critical piece that makes sure the gas, oil, and, everything's working in harmony. And, I think a lot of times that can take a huge toll on an office manager, especially if they're not treated with, dignity and respect.
So you mentioned that it takes a special kind of person to be an office manager, and it sounds like it's special with keeping the engine running. It's someone who's really just willing to pick up the slack without recognition and just keep things going and being that catch-all. So with that, how can our office managers who are like that or who are looking to build a better background and strengths in that, how can they create better boundaries and maintain a healthier routine? Because I think burnout is going to be so quick and easy if they're just taking all that all the time.
Super good question. So I think recognizing when someone is burnt out is like number one. You don't know what you don't know. And I don't know how many times, and I'm guilty of this too, that you walk into your practice and you've noticed that your breathing is a little faster than normal, and you recognize that your heart rate is 85 instead of 75. And, do we pay attention to those things? So I think a couple things, super, super simple. And I call it the big principle. So, and that does have some layers to it. So be in my mind stands for breathe. So that's number one. So recognizing, are you breathing? I don't know how many people, and I know this seems like such a small thing, but it's so big for me, and I know it is for other people. I will catch myself when I'm nervous holding my breath. And I can't tell you how many times like I've either had a headache or a backache or a neck ache. And if I started breathing, it actually started to get better. So I think the big thing is for me, breathing, checking that first. Does that make sense?
It does. And now that you said that, I've literally just found myself like
You're like,
holding my breath and because I'm so nervous.
oh my gosh, you don't seem nervous at all. Well, the next thing is I, of course, and that's investigate. So be curious, investigate, look around, understand how you're feeling. Do you have an itch somewhere that there's no reason for? Is there a pain in the side of your neck when you talk to this particular assistant or particular patient? You have to recognize the physical symptoms as well, because when we're stressed, what we see outside of us is a situation. And if you don't mind me kind of going off on a tangent for half a second. So let's say a patient comes in and they're angry and they're directing that right at the office manager. Instantly, this process happens within us. We take in that information. It starts to open all these files of like time, space, when this happened before, how we're going to react, how do we feel about it? All these things start to happen within our own physiological nature. And all these things start to happen. And then we are in all of a sudden a state. And that state has physical properties. So understanding what an office manager, it's not just, and what's so funny is most people try to say, well, I was fine until so-and-so walked in, or I was great until that happened, right? So you're like, I was great till I got on that podcast with Lorie. So it's like one of those kind of things. And honestly, it's not about any of that. It's about how we react. So when I say the big principle, I'm like, breathe, investigate what's going on. And then lastly, be grateful, because I think one of the things we're missing as humans is that we are not grateful for every experience. We tend to push things off. I can't believe that happened. I had such a bad day. And I really, really, as much as I possibly can, try to look at things and say, that was a horrible experience, but what did I need to, I love the quote, there's no such thing as winning or losing, only learning. So I love that. And I think that if we kind of all apply that, even if you're in a horrible situation or have a horrible day with a patient, with your teams, with your doctor, you kind of got to look at it and say, what did I need? What was I able to express? What was I able to feel? I know that's kind of fuzzy, but we have to feel the fuzzy too. Hey, I think I just coined something new. We have to feel the fuzzy.
Feel the fuzzy. Put it on a t-shirt.
Right, exactly. And I think most of the time office managers tend to hold all of their issues because they're people who like to make everything run smooth all around them. So very good at balancing. And so that plays out on the outside of them, but doesn't always resonate on the inside. There might be turmoil on the inside while everything else looks peachy on the outside. So I would say pay attention to the inside.
So, and going back to your I and investigate, I was thinking about, and how you mentioned that sometimes there may be interactions with, maybe it's a patient or somebody in the office that just really grind your gears. I'm thinking about people that just irk me. As soon as I see them, I'm like, I'm done. How would you suggest that someone be able to process and work through that, especially if it's someone or something they have to interact on a daily basis?
Interesting. So, best advice I've ever been given, and best advice that I need to take more often. Repeat after me, Mo. It's not about me.
It's not about me.
Okay, so if let's just call someone like Carrie Crabapple. I don't know. Somebody's very crabby, right? And they're in practice with you, and it's on a daily basis. I would say, kind of putting up that shield of armor that says, okay, I know this isn't about me. This is about this person. And if I have to work with this person long term, I need to understand what's going on. Something is going on here. So back to that investigative, looking for, not saying, oh my gosh, Carrie Crabapple does not like me. We tend to, as humans, we want everybody to like us, right? We want everybody to have a smile on their face when they see us, and we want the enjoyment, the connection. But when someone reacts to us negatively, we instantly, what do? We instantly think we turn inward. And that's probably the biggest disservice you can do for the other person, because you're not giving them the space to really express what truly is going on, because you're too busy in your own stuff. Not you, Bo, but you're too busy taking it personally. That part has to go, especially in a business environment. If somebody comes in and, It's different when you have a problem team member that's just consistently in a bad place. That's obviously a management issue, but I'm talking about the person's well-being and how they interact with another human.
Okay, I'm already thinking about how I can compartmentalize and not make it about me because I'm very much a textbook people pleaser. I want everyone to like me, and I definitely
Guilty.
make it my problem when they don't.
Guilty. Absolutely. One of my slides that I use when I'm presenting about health and wellness of the practice leader, and forgive me that it's kind of silly the way it sounds, but you're not like them, you are like you, and you is good.
Oh my goodness, that makes me feel so warm and fuzzy inside.
See, the fuzzy's
It,
already happening. Yeah,
it
and
is.
I love quotes just for the simple fact. In fact, I was reading one of our AADOM blogs recently, and an office manager was talking about how she texts all her team Sunday night going into Monday because Mondays are so hard for people. I mean, I remember when I worked in the office, I used to get depressed on Sunday because I used to not super depressed, but like enough to where I was like, oh, tomorrow's Monday, all this stuff. You got to turn it on, turn it off. And she texts them and basically gives them an inspirational quote every Sunday, kind of kicking off their week. I mean, those are the kind of things. It's not necessarily for the office manager, but that's the kind of mentality of an office manager. Like they want their team to have a fantastic week. They want them to carry that throughout with the patients, with their team, with each other. And I think those proactive steps helps to set the tone for the whole entire experience. And I think one of the things that is so important, and I hope we can talk about this before we're done, is that, I know this, again, we're all on the fuzzy stuff today, but that's the topic, right? We want everybody to feel better all the time, is really setting intention for what you want. So I don't know how many times in fact, I just had this happen. I'm like, I'm going to hand this to my husband. I'm going to ask him to zip this up, and he's going to, muscle it too hard and break the zipper. Sure enough, what did he do? Broke the zipper. Was it his fault? Nope. It was the intention that I set about what he was doing. I mean, we have so much power to create what we want versus let things, it's like nothing is happening to us. Everything's happening through us. So
I love that you touched upon the fact of with the practice manager who was sending out that text message on Sundays. I really think that we forget how much the little things impact people. So one thing that I do, I'm not good being consistent at it, but we have what we call Mo's verbal caffeine, and I do a video every Monday morning that gets sent internally. And
wow.
it's just me being, it's what I call my crackhead energy, just kind of being crazy and getting people pumped for Monday because Mondays are so hard. And for a
Love
while I didn't do it because I needed a break and to reset. And I really thought that people were just getting annoyed and didn't want to hear from me because I'm kind of crazy and I can be a lot all the time. And so I had multiple people, they were like, "Oh, we really missed that. Can you start doing that again?" And I did not realize how much it was encouraging people, and that was something they look forward to. In my head, I was just thinking, this is really dumb. It doesn't matter. I look like someone who just likes to hear themselves talk and make TikToks. And it wasn't. So I think, for our listeners, it's so important. Find something small that you can do to help encourage your team because it really does make an impact whether, you're in your own head and you think it's not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For the AADOM members, I do what's called Lorie's Lessons on Thursdays. And it's just a simple social post with some advice. And, it's one of my favorite things to do. And I did take a little break over the summer and I'm going to start getting back into it. But yeah, I mean, but think of just that right there, Mo. Just put yourself in a dental practice for a second. Okay. And you're Mo's, what'd you call it?
It's
Verbal caffeine.
Mo's verbal caffeine.
Nice. So that basically implies, so let's say that you were a dental office manager, that you are going to be the energy for everyone, right? So I would just challenge you to say that Mo needs to look in the mirror and do her own inspirational talk right? Instead of trying to help everybody else. So I have a slide for that. So I could help with that at any time. But I think that's wonderful that you do that. And what a great idea for office managers too, to do a quick video that they could send to their team on Sundays as well. I mean, why not? Hey, it's me tomorrow. Let's all show up at 8:00. It'll be great. I mean, think about the problems that are happening in our culture of dentistry right now with people not being able to find people to fill positions. I mean, that's a whole other topic, right? And I know that it's an important topic. And, I think for me, if you look at the office manager's role, how many times are we like hygienist called out sick, or we have 2 hygienists out, or 1 hygienist just quit, or 1 assistant just quit? It's like we have a shortage of people. Whereas, prior to COVID, we had full select teams and we had a little bit more flexibility about, do we like this person? Is this person a good fit? And when I say like them, I mean, is it a good fit in the practice, not just personally? But we don't have as much of that luxury anymore because our culture has changed slightly with the way people are working nowadays. So, and I think it's, a symptom of a bigger problem, which is we're all trying to figure out where we've all landed now, if that makes sense. And I think the same happens for an office manager. It's hard to imagine to take care of yourself when you're just busy trying to find a person to take care of your patients.
And speaking of that,
yes,
especially
ma'am.
maybe there's a staff shortage. I cannot speak today. Oh my goodness. And being able to figure out and manage the practice. A lot of office managers have the opportunity or ability really to check things from home. How often should we be checking in from the outside of the office, or how long should they spend outside of office hours doing things like that?
So that's a great question. There's 2 ways to look at that. I think it depends on the size of the practice and how it's set up. So I think some office managers who are constantly doing insurance verification and they're billing insurance and they have access to their desktop and they can work remotely, and that's okay with the doctor. And there's all these variables. I think that's okay. But here's what I would caution. I would caution that doing too much of that, and you're talking to a person who's, prior to COVID, I've worked from home for 15 years. We're a virtual organization. So we were kind of country before country was cool. So we've already, we're in that mode, which allowed AADOM to move very quickly into working the COVID way with everybody being home. So now that we're all back to work and things are trying to stabilize, I think asking yourself as an office manager, should you work from home? And to me, I've done it so long that I have a defined space where I work. And then when I shut the door, that work is done. But office managers have a tendency to let their work life spill over into their home life. And I can tell you that there's nothing worse than not having a space, a break, a safe space to get away from work and be with your family. So, work family, home family should be very well identified. And I think every once in a while, it's okay for an office manager to catch up on something or work on some billing or things that they can do from home, even calling patients. But it really depends on the person, whether or not they can separate that way. And it depends on the way the practice is set up. I think an office manager is a critical team member in the practice. I see office managers say all the time that, yeah, I work from home 3 or 4 days a week. And I'm like, for me, that wouldn't work. Like if I was in a dental office and I was an office manager, number one, your team has to work and experience you and be with you. And secondarily, it's different when if your child is sick and you got to go home and take care of your child and you can still get some work done while you're there. That's different. But to plan to be out of the office, I don't know, for me, and I don't know how much experience you've had with patients or, people who, you've talked to from, your experiences with front office people. The patient experience is by far the best part. That is Mo's verbal caffeine. That is what gives, it's like, everything in life is a give and take of energy. So I'm giving to you what I can. You're going to give back to me what you can. And it creates a great conversation, right? I think that patients are the ones that really do that. My favorite time in a practice when I was working with patients was learning their stories and understanding, what pets they had and what their hobbies were. Those were the things that I feel like really fill you back up. So my answer to working from home is I don't think it's the best thing. That's my personal opinion. I think it can be done here and there, but I'm not 100% certain it's the best thing for a practice to have that critical team member absent from that environment. Don't throw
So,
anything at me, people of the world.
so per your personal opinion, you don't think working from home is the best, but for our listeners who maybe that is something they have to do, you did mention about being intentional. So how can you create an intentional plan with that work-life balance if they are working in the office or at home?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So home and or office, let's start with home because I'm very familiar with that. Again, have a defined space, try to limit distractions. It's great. I've got it on my phone right now. I've got a do not disturb on while we're talking because I'm in a defined moment doing something that's important. I think letting things, filter in when you're working from home, it is very difficult. And again, I respect private contractors. I did it for years. I understand what that looks like, creating a home-based business. I think that office managers who can work from home and take advantage of that, just make sure that your home life doesn't filter in too much into your workspace because you really need a good definition between the two. Because it literally is like taking off one hat, putting on the other hat. And yes, I'm a mom. So my son's 23 now, but I still, have to be myself and be a mom, be myself and be a wife. This is no different. When you're home, you have to be able to say, I'm working for Dr. Smith today, and this is what I'm doing. And this is the defined time that I'm going to give him and attention or her. So I think it's really important to define that space. At work, it's a little different because you're in the work-life family, right? So you're in your space. A lot of office managers have separate offices. I think that's a really good option to not have to be at the front all the time because I think as an office manager, your role is, at least with AADOM members, I can tell you this, Mo, that they're more CFO-like. So they're doing things like, working on P&Ls and working on inventory, and they're working on time cards and HR issues. So OSHA, HIPAA, I mean, I could go on and on. That really needs defined attention. And when you're at the front office space, and I love my dear friend Teresa Duncan says, don't call it front desk. That's a piece of furniture. We're not a piece of furniture. So that's like my favorite. So you're at the front counter, you're interacting with patients. It's very difficult to separate yourself and have that defined time. So that would be my thing, would be define your space, define your time, and be intentional about how you do that.
Okay. So you also mentioned hobbies. I think many of us, myself included, feel, where do I have the time to even have a hobby? Because once I'm done with work, if I can separate the two, I just want to sleep or rest. I don't want to do anything else. How do you find time for that? I feel you're the queen of that, considering you are a accomplished musician and songwriter. So
Well, let me see. I'm 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 laughing inside because during COVID, my husband and I got super bored, just kind of doing the same mundane things and not being able to go out. So we both started Etsy stores. So I have an Etsy store. My husband has an Etsy store. We sing karaoke on the weekends. We do all kinds of fun stuff. But to answer your question specifically, how do you define a hobby, a practice? So I think like anything else, you have to make it important and you have to make it important to you. So, we had a camper for a while. We loved to go camping with our friends. We, of course, loved our pets. We love to sing. Sometimes we sing at home, but how do you have a hobby or separate time for that? So the greatest thing about my boss, the president of AADOM, Heather Colicchio, is she loves a good side hustle. So she has given like this unconscious permission to all of us to explore creative sides of us that we want to explore. So any good company, in my opinion, like it's not even like I've got an Etsy store. I want her to know because she'll think I'm doing that on my time. She knows me so well that she knows that I would define the time that's appropriate for that. So I think a lot of times office managers and other team members feel guilty about their hobbies because they think it takes away from their practice time. So one of my favorite stories, and I won't go into who it was, but one of my favorite stories. Oh gosh, I don't want to say his name just in case, but he's a very famous doctor who has these wonderful awards, and he had his office manager. And just for this exercise, we'll call her Sue. So Sue helped him so he could do his hobby, helped the other associate doctor so he could do his hobby. And then they finally went back to Sue and said, "What do you want to do?" And Sue said she wanted to learn how to ride a horse. So this is like the best story. So they supported her and she learned a horse. She went horseback riding and did the whole thing. And the two doctors went to her first horse show and they surprised her and bought her the horse.
Oh
So
my goodness.
now that, Mo, is like extreme, right? That's super big. Not everybody can do those kind of things, but like if I'm in a practice and I know my dentist likes to golf, I think on a Monday morning, I'm going to go, get him some monogram golf balls and sit them on his desk. And if, I know, Susie, the hygienist loves to do macrame. I'm going to get her a skein and a thing and say, just thought of you. Hope you can fit this into your routine. For yourself trying to do that, permission. You have to give yourself permission to be able to take that time. Because look, we weren't put here to work and die. We weren't put here to work and do chores. We were also put here to establish ourselves with like, who am I? Like, can imagine like your DNA, my DNA, we're like completely different creatures, top to bottom, right? We're so different, but what's so similar in that we're supposed to create. So look at how your company has looked at you and said, you are the host for the Happy Practice Playbook. You are our caffeine, and you're going to spread that joy now all throughout the dental industry, right? It's the same reason why AADOM comes to me and says, every year, Lorie, we want you to do the opening number in front of 1,000 people for all the people at our conference, because we know that you will scoop those people up and use your creativity. It's not my job description. It's like my job description does not say, go sing And I had an office manager say to me one time, one of our practice administrators of the year, my sweet Betsy Cord, I was kind of getting just like you, Mo. I was like, I don't know, I'm opening this conference. People are going to think it's self-serving. I don't want them to think I'm just getting up there to sing. I'm dressing up in all these costumes. This is like so like stupid. And she said, no. She said, you are our voice. And when you sing and you do that song at the beginning of the conference, you set the tone for all of us, for the whole thing, for us to feel like you just said what we want to say. And that was all I needed to hear. So permission is the big answer.
You're making me think of there's a band, Fall Out Boy, and it's making me think of a lyric from them, kind of what we're talking about. But one of their songs, they say, you are what you love and not who loves you. And I think that's really great, right? Especially when we're giving ourselves permission to have our hobbies and to embrace it and to do all the things that we love, not just our jobs and things that, want to do, but outside of that. And at the end of the day, that's what makes us who we are, not the fact that, hey, some people are not going to like that or love us, but that doesn't matter because we are what we love. That's what you were saying just made me think of.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I don't know about you, but lyrics do that. Winona Judd said one time, she's like, there are times when just a song changes your whole mood, your whole attitude. So if you don't have a hobby, I would say look for music, look for a good podcast to throw in. And wise words from my father, who is a 78-year-old, brilliant, wise man. My mom was a professional clown and was an entertainer for many years. She was Lollipop. My dad was a HVAC guy, brilliant, could diagnose anything, but he had two really good words of advice for me. And I'm very lucky to still have both my parents. He said, plan your work and work your plan. So simple, so easy. Plan your work and work your plan. So that's one. And then he also reminded me that every once in a while, you just got to go dig a ditch. And for me, digging a ditch is really getting in there and doing a mundane task over and over again so that you don't have to think. And sometimes that will help break state when you have chaos around you and things happening in a dental practice where you can just maybe go into an office, close your door, and maybe go over your accounts receivable. Just something really, simple that you're checking off, that you're looking at something. Do something that calms your center, lets you breathe and get back into the that space of getting regrounded.
So sometimes there's simplicity of doing the mundane things and just recentering ourselves. I love it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so we are almost out of time, but we like to leave our listeners with what we like to call a motivational tip. But it's basically, if you could give our listeners one page out of your playbook of success, what would it be?
You mind if I read a little bit?
Go right for it. No problem.
So I am big on intention, and there's a famous holistic, wonderful guru named Louise Hay, and a lot of people know who she is. Her and Wayne Dyer did a lot of great work, and a lot of people think it's too fuzzy. I think it's not fuzzy enough. So we're all about the fuzzy, right? So when you're talking about centering yourself and getting ready for your day, being intentional about things, I like to do this mirror work, and where you're kind of looking at yourself in the mirror, and basically it's like Mo is going to look right in her eyes, and as corny as it sounds, it's so simple, saying to yourself, I'm one of a kind, I add value to the world, I am important, I am loved, I make God proud, and I shine. And if God doesn't work for you, use a different metaphor, whatever works for you. But for me, that's what works for me. And I think that intuitively, we say to ourselves, it's going to be a bad day or it's going to be a good day. How often do you say, oh my gosh, it's going to be a good day? I mean, we really plan. We kind of sit back, put both seatbelts on and plan for like the worst case scenario. Well, who's not going to show up? What's going to happen with the doctor? The patient's going to be late. What would happen? Get curious. What would happen if you planned for something completely different? I guarantee it's going to change everything. So plan your work, work your plan.
Plan your work, work your plan. Simple.
Got it.
Simple and easy.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lorie. That is a wrap for today. And thanks to everyone listening. Don't forget to join the Happy Practice Playbook Facebook group, where we'll be discussing this topic more and sharing other helpful resources to help keep your people happy. As always, I'll be posting to get all of your tips and tricks as well. If you liked what you heard today, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next episode. We hope you'll join us next time. It's your girl, Mo Jones.